Nobody is going to settle this debate for you by telling you which one is better. The people who say real estate is the only real wealth and the people who say index funds beat everything have both already decided, which means they stopped thinking about it a long time ago. This is not that conversation. This is about what actually happens to two people who start in their 20s. One goes into real estate, one goes into the market, and both stay consistent for 30 years. The outcome is not what either side wants you to believe. You are 24 years old and you have $15,000 saved. It took you 2.5 years to save. You did not do anything extraordinary. You just spent less than you earned for long enough that the number got there. The $15,000 is sitting in a checking account, earning essentially nothing, and you are now faced with the first real financial decision of your adult life. Not where to put it for a month, where to put it for the next 3 decades. The first version of you puts the $15,000 into a broad market index fund. Total market, low cost, 0.03% expense ratio. You set up an automatic contribution of $500 a month. The money moves on the first, you do not think about it again. Second version of you uses the $15,000 as a down payment on a small rental property, a 2-bedroom in a mid-tier city. Purchase price, $165,000. You put 10% down, which is $16,500, so you stretch the savings slightly and borrow a small amount from a family member to cover the gap. The mortgage is $1,050 a month. You rent it for $1,350. The difference before expenses is $300 a month. Both versions of you are now in the game. What happens next is where it gets interesting. You are 26 and the index fund version of you has $28,000 in the account. The market had a good year followed by a flat year. You contributed $12,000 over 2 years on top of the original $15,000. The number is not exciting, but the structure is running. You do not think about it much. That is the point.
The real estate version of you is having a different experience. The water heater failed in month 8. That was $1,100. The tenant in month 14 stopped paying rent and it took 4 months and $2,200 in legal fees to resolve. You had a 2-month vacancy after that, where you carried the mortgage with no income coming in. You have now spent approximately $6,800 in unexpected costs over 2 years on a property that was supposed to generate $300 a month in positive cash flow. Cash flow has been negative for stretches. You were learning things about property ownership that no one explained before you signed the paperwork. This is not an argument against real estate. This is what real estate actually feels like at the beginning, when the property is small, the reserves are thin, and the experience is 0. You are 30, and something is stabilized. Both versions of you are in a better position than you were at 24, but the path that got you here looks nothing alike. The index fund version of you has $87,000 in the account. You contributed $36,000 over 6 years. The market returned the rest. You have not made a single decision about the account since you set it up. You have not called anyone, you've not attended a meeting, you've not negotiated with a tenant or filed a maintenance request or carried a mortgage through a vacancy. The $87,000 exists because you automated a transfer and left it alone. The real estate version of you has a property worth approximately $195,000 on the current market. You bought it for $165,000. The mortgage balance is now around $138,000. Your equity is roughly $57,000. The property has also generated cumulative positive cash flow over the full 6 years of approximately $8,400 after accounting for all expenses, vacancies, and the bad stretch in year 2. Your actual net position is around $65,000 when you add the equity and the cash flow together. The index fund version of you is ahead, but not in the way the index fund people would want you to present it, because the real estate version of you also has something the account balance does not capture. You understand how a rental property works. You know how to screen a tenant, how to read a lease, how to handle a repair without getting taken, how to talk to a property manager, and how to evaluate whether a number makes sense before you commit to it. That knowledge is not in the account. It compounds differently. You are 35, and this is where the two paths start to diverge in ways that matter. The index fund version of you has $178,000 in the account. You increased your monthly contribution to $700 after a raise at 31, and the account accelerated. The crossover point arrived quietly around year 9, when the annual return on the balance began to exceed the annual contribution. You did not notice when it happened. You just looked at the account one day and the math had shifted. The account is now working harder than you are on its behalf. The real estate version of you refinanced the original property at 32, pulled out $28,000 in equity, and used it as a down payment on a second property. You now own 2 rental units. First property has a tenant who has been there for 3 years and pays on time. The second property is newer and came with fewer surprises. Combined monthly cash flow after all expenses is approximately $680. Not life-changing, but it is income that arrives whether you work that month or not. The real estate version of you also has total equity across both properties of approximately $94,000. Combined property value is around $410,000. Combined mortgage balance is around $316,000. You have $94,000 in equity and $680 a month in cash flow. The index fund version of you has $178,000 and 0 monthly income from the account. Neither position is wrong. They are different instruments solving slightly different problems. The index fund is building a number. The real estate is building a number and an income stream. The cost of the income stream has been time, complexity, and the kind of stress that does not appear in any projection. You are 40, and the gap in effort is visible in a way it was not at 30. The index fund version of you has spent 16 years doing almost nothing. The account has grown to $312,000. You have contributed approximately $95,000 of your own money. The market has contributed $217,000. You did not earn that $217,000. You owned the habit of not touching the account. That is all that was required. The real estate version of you has spent 16 years managing, deciding, refinancing, replacing tenants, handling repairs, researching markets, and thinking about properties in a way that does not fully turn off on weekends. You now own 3 properties.
Total portfolio value is approximately $780,000. Total mortgage debt is approximately $530,000. Net equity is around $250,000. Monthly cash flow after all expenses across 3 properties is approximately $1,400. You have built something that generates income. The index fund version of you has built something larger in pure dollar terms, but it generates nothing until you sell or withdraw. These are not equivalent. They are not directly comparable. They are 2 different answers to 2 different questions. And most people never clarify which question they are actually trying to answer. The question the index fund answers is, how do I build the largest possible number with the least possible ongoing effort? The question real estate answers is, how do I build income-generating assets that I control and that benefit from leverage? If you do not know which question matters more to you, you will make the wrong choice regardless of which path you pick, because you will abandon it the first time it underperforms against you. Are 45. And something has happened to the real estate version of you that did not happen to the index fund version. One of the properties has appreciated significantly. A neighborhood that was mid-tier in your late 20s is now desirable. Property you bought for $165,000 is worth $340,000. The mortgage balance is under $90,000. The equity in that single property is now $250,000. You did not engineer this. You bought in a mid-tier city in your mid-20s because it was what you could afford. The appreciation was not genius. It was time and geography working in your favor without being asked. The index fund version of you has $510,000. You stopped increasing contributions at $700 a month and held it there for the last decade. The account has done the rest. You are 55, and you were looking at the shape of 2 different lives built from the same starting point. A 24-year-old with $15,000 and a decision. The index fund version of you has $890,000. You contributed approximately $168,000 over 31 years. The account has generated $722,000 in return.
That required nothing from you except consistency and the discipline to leave it alone during the years when leaving it alone felt difficult. The withdrawal and retirement will be tax advantaged inside the Roth structure you set up at the beginning. The number is real. It is accessible. It will generate income through systematic withdrawals for the rest of your life if managed with any basic level of care. The real estate version of you has a portfolio of 4 properties worth approximately $1.6 million. Mortgage debt remaining is around $480,000.
Net equity is roughly $1.1 million. Monthly cash flow after all expenses is approximately $3,200. You also have a smaller investment account you built from the cash flow over the last decade, currently sitting at around $180,000. The total net worth picture of the real estate version of you is larger, meaningfully larger. But so is the complexity, so is the exposure, so is the ongoing management obligation that will not end when you retire, because the properties do not retire with you. You will either continue managing them or hire someone to manage them, which reduces the cash flow, or sell them, which triggers a tax event that the index fund version of you does not face in the same way. Here is what neither side tells you clearly enough. The index fund path is not the boring choice for people who lacked ambition. It is the correct structural choice for people who want maximum return on minimum ongoing effort, and who are honest about the fact that complexity has a cost that does not appear in any projection. The real estate path is not the sophisticated choice for people who understand money better. It is the correct structural choice for people who want income-generating assets, who can tolerate the operational weight of ownership, and who are willing to trade time and stress for leverage and cash flow. Most people choose based on what sounds smarter at a dinner party. That is not a financial strategy.
That is identity management, dressed up as investing. Somewhere right now, a 24-year-old has $15,000 and is trying to decide. They are reading threads and watching videos and asking people who have already decided what they should do. Every answer they get will be shaped by what the person answering chose. Nobody is neutral. Nobody is disinterested. Everyone is defending the path they took with the emotional investment of someone who has tied their financial identity to a decision made a decade ago. The actual answer is quieter than any of them will tell you is this. Both paths work if you commit fully and stay consistent. Both paths fail if you abandon them the first time the other one looks better. The real estate investor who sells in a down market loses. Index fund investor who panics and pulls out loses. The mechanism of loss is identical. It is impatience meeting uncertainty and making a permanent decision in response to a temporary condition. Pick the path that matches how you actually want to live for the next 30 years. Not how you want to feel about yourself at 25 when you tell people what you're doing with your money. How you actually want to spend your Saturdays at 40. That is the question. The $15,000